It's the Daily Doug.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Daily Doug. Thanks for being with me today. You have arrived on a Monday, and it's going to be a Metal Monday, y'all. I have you covered for your Metal Monday, but it's going to be a unique and historical Metal Monday. Today, I am looking at the American National Anthem performed by the one and only Jimi Hendrix, and I am happy that you are joining me. So I have included music by Jimi Hendrix only once before on the channel, and that was this past February with Voodoo Child Slight Return. I have also heard the longer version of that, Voodoo Child, and that was included in our Fan Favorites episode 3 all the way back in April of last year of 2022 for our International Guitar Month. Well, this year, this Star Spangled Banner performance by Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock was suggested to us by Tom for our Guitar Month fan favorites, but it didn't get enough upvotes to make it into the video. But as a result, I've had this on my mind now for a couple of months, and as it's now July 4th weekend here in America, I'm realizing that I've never really listened or watched this all the way through. I have seen pictures of it, I've heard, I think, snippets of it, but I don't think that I've listened to it all the way through and really understood how he was treating the song. And I know that I haven't listened to it critically to know what key he's in and all of that and all the context around it. So it makes for, I think, the right thing for us to do here on July 4th weekend here in America. So let's take a look at this one. Let's start with the song itself first, though, y'all. It was written on September 14th, 1814, by Francis Scott Key after he lived through the attack on Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor by British ships during the War of 1812. And at that time, the American flag only had 15 stars and 15 stripes, and it was known as the Star Spangled Banner. So that's where we get the tune's name. But like many songs of that era, the tune itself was pre-existing. It was written some 40 years before Francis Scott Key put the words that we know to it now, and it was written, this tune was written by John Stafford Smith for a society of amateur musicians in London, and in the time hence it had become a well-known tune, singable tune that people knew both in Britain and in America. And so Francis Scott Key knew that melody, and he ended up writing his poem to the existing song's form. And he ended up writing 4 different stanzas, but we really only perform the first verse most often these days. It took more than 70 years for the song to be recognized for official use. That was first done by the U.S. Navy in 1889. And then in 1931, Congress made a law declaring that the song would become the official national anthem of the United States, and Herbert Hoover signed that resolution into law. So we then fast forward to the late 60s and the arrival of Woodstock. Woodstock was held in the middle of summer, y'all, August 15th to 18th, and it was in 1969 at a dairy farm in Bethel, New York. And the festival has become regarded as quite an important moment culturally and in popular music history. It was a defining and galvanizing event for the counterculture movement of the time, and a ton of people were there. I've seen estimates that differ, but for sure 300,000 plus. Some estimates are up to 400,000 people attending over the weekend. The good news is that there was a documentary film crew that was there and taking footage, sound and video, and the documentary ended up being released the next year in March of 1970, and it received an Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. So let's get to the actual song, y'all. I've been talking long enough. This is going to be Jimi Hendrix doing his version of the Star Spangled Banner. Off we go. I should do it left-handed. Because Jimmy's left-handed. I don't know if I can air guitar backwards. I can barely air guitar forwards. He's wearing like a leather jacket, and it's the middle of summer. Wow, that's a high key. There's a leading tone to 5. I think he's an E. There's the T. I could sing it if I was a bass, but it's really not a key that I would ever sing this in. Ooh, major pitch bend. Outlines the tonic chord, and the Rockets, red glare all the way up to the high sol. I think he's expounding upon the Rockets and their glare. So the song is like stopped. Melody, at least. Bombs bursting in air. And now he's telling us about the bombs. Right? The melody just kind of stops. Or at least what I know of the melody. How do I do it? Pitch bend, wah-wah pedal, distortion. Bombs falling, right? That's what I get from that. Because think of the time period. Maybe it's a statement about the war. Taps-ish, right? Before he goes into the rest of it. That's amazing. Double picking. Wide vibrato with the wah-wah. Harmonic. Wow. He gives us an amen, and then flat 6, flat 7, 1 to finish it off. Whoa. That was, wow. You know what's amazing to that about for me is being able to think about it in the time period, right? The war is going on, and so he's doing the national anthem, you know, paying you know, I don't know, respect or homage to America where he's performing, but he's also making a social statement. When they talk about rockets and they talk about bombs, he's mimicking those on his instrument. And then towards the end, he played a little bit of taps, which is played to honor those that sacrifice their lives or get killed in combat, right? And so he's paying homage to those who have lost their lives in the war. And then at the very end, he gives, once he lands back on that E, a little amen. Like he goes to the A chord first, and then from the A chord he goes C, D, E, right up the scale, like flat 6 to flat 7 to 1. Really, really fun. Wow. So, the song itself is most often sung when it's performed, and it's quite difficult to sing, y'all. The melody spans a full octave and a half, and if you're a singer that wants to pop off the high note, it's a full 2 octaves in its range. And as a person who is a bass baritone, I often would perform this if I'm called on to sing it, especially a cappella, in either A flat or G. Because that low G, let's say, is like a G2. The high note would be a D4 for me, an octave and a half higher, and that's a range that I can get to. But if I start it too low or too high, I'll get in trouble pretty quick just by how big of a range that the melody has. The ya-dum pum 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 beam, that's arpeggiating within the tonic chord, and there's big jumps melodically in that part of the song. Really, really cool, right? Something that I didn't realize until my read-in today was that Jimmy's career wasn't very long, right? It was only 4 or 5 years as a signed recording artist. By 1969, this is what I didn't realize, he was the world's highest paid rock musician. In 1969, Jimmy was the highest paid rock musician in the world, and he was the headliner of this event. And he played several songs during his set. He was supposed to go on with his band on a Sunday night, really late on a Sunday night, but he decided to delay that until Monday morning, and he and the band went on at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And it makes sense. When we see the footage of him playing, it's in the daytime, right? But it's early in the morning, and I found that quite interesting. Critic Al Aronovitz, writing for the New York Post at the time, said that it was the most electrifying moment of Woodstock, and it was probably the single greatest moment of the 60s. Makes sense to me, y'all. It would be kind of that culminating thing. It's, you think about the beginning of the 60s versus where it was at the end of the decade, and a major cultural shift had happened. And I think that this festival on its own is just seen as one of those galvanizing events, that the counterculture is here, and there's a large segment of society that agrees with it and understands it and almost kind of associates with it, and we can't stand what's going on, all these things that we have grievances about, and we're moving on, and things are going to be different in the 70s, I think is kind of what happens here. Sadly, though, Jimmy would die just a little over a year after this performance. He died on September 18th, 1970, of a drug overdose. But his legacy lives on, y'all. We're now, more than 50 years since his death? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame biography for Jimmy states in part that he was arguably the greatest instrumentalist in the history of rock music. Jimi Hendrix expanded the range and vocabulary of the electric guitar into areas no musician had ever ventured before. His boundless drive, technical ability, and creative application of such effects as the wah-wah pedal and distortion forever transformed the sound of rock and roll. I don't think they're lying, y'all. An amazing talent, gone too soon. I can only imagine all of the influence and sounds he would have made as a mature and aged musician going through a natural long life, but we only have a little bit of playing from him, but the playing that we have is revolutionary and continues to be revolutionary, and I think it's fitting for the Star Spangled Banner. It's a great rendition of it. It's a politically informed rendition of it, and it's a smart and just really nuanced performance of it, and I give it great respect. So wonderful stuff from Jimmy back in the day. It's always great to get back to Woodstock. I've never seen the documentary. So maybe that's something we can look at in the future, maybe on our Patreon or Discord. Who knows? But I think that's all for today, friends. Thanks for being with me, and we'll see you next time on another edition of the Daily Doug.